So what do we mean when we talk about addressing disintegration? Sometimes people say, I'm not really sure it's my job to be addressing disintegration in the network. But what we say is everyone can play some role in addressing disintegration, whatever position they're within in the network. But of course, each of us can only do this within our AMBIT, so our sphere of influence. That's the literal meaning of the word AMBIT. So there might be some areas of disintegration which really happen at a commissioning level, and if we're a frontline worker, we can't address that. We might be able to advocate for the need for change. But what we're talking about is those things that you can do from within your role to either reduce disintegration or at least minimise its impact, or even just make sense of it. So there's lots of different ways that we might address disintegration. The first step is getting to understand the network, actually mapping it out. And sometimes that's easier said than done. I've certainly had experiences where I've asked a young person to tell me all the different workers that they're seeing, and sometimes it's so complex that they forget to mention someone, and I find them out a bit later on. So certainly spending quite a bit of time, firstly just trying to understand who's out there, who's doing what. The next bit we can do is at an individual level, making sure that I maintain a mentalising stance towards the other people in the network. To notice in myself when I start to find myself getting a bit cross with that housing worker again. That might be when I need to have a conversation with a team member and just check, am I starting to get quite non-mentalising here? Because actually most of the time that other worker's behaviour does make sense from their perspective. They do have a reason that they're behaving in the way that they are. So I need to, at an individual level, address disintegration by keeping a check that I'm sort of keeping mentalising myself and making an effort to mentalise those other people in the network. So that's also something that we can help our clients to do, to help them to try and understand, firstly, who all these different people are and what they do. Sometimes we can play a bit of a role in translating for other workers and the way that they describe things. But we can also try and encourage our client to mentalise. So when they're feeling really, really cross with their residential worker, can we do some thinking about why might it be that they did this thing that's really upset you? How can we make sense of that? And I think there's definitely a role we can play, whoever we are, in supporting our clients to navigate their network, to try and make some sense of who they'd go to for what and when. And then lastly, it's making some effort to identify particular areas of disintegration and then making some effort to rectify them, or if we can't rectify them, to minimise their impact. Because sometimes that disintegration or those differences are inevitable, but they have less of an impact if we recognise them and can make sense of them, and therefore hopefully not get quite so cross about them as we might otherwise. So in other videos we're going to introduce some specific AMBIT tools for mapping out networks and for making sense of networks and identifying disintegration. So those are the program, the professional diagram, the disintegration grid and the sculpt.